This is the Content, Design, and Delivery podcast with Michael Toner. Each episode, Toner discusses marketing and communication strategies with business leaders, designers, and content marketers that help shine the light on successful companies and marketing ideas. If you understand just how important content, design, and delivery is to the overall story you and your company is trying to share with the world, then listen along to Content, Design, and Delivery with your host, Michael Toner.
So first, welcome. Can you tell everybody who you are and what you do at this moment?
Yeah, so my name is Ankarino Lara. I am the founder and the chief executive officer. You rarely get to say that. Usually people say CEO, but I like to inflate my title. Founded a company called This Moment, which is a content marketing platform on steroids. We've been around now for more than a decade and service Fortune 1000 companies who have a specific need to connect the brand messages of their brands and agencies with an end constituency, whether that's users or customers or employees or what have you. And we have a lot of cool software that we've been using and really optimizing over the years to try to identify behavior of individuals and then try to figure out how to personalize the delivery of content. And content is where it all starts. And I know we'll probably be speaking about content a little bit more today, but ultimately that is king. What our customers crave is that connection. And so we're trying to facilitate that.
Ankarino, it's why I needed you to be the first guest on the Content, Design, and Delivery podcast, because when I started thinking about the whole concept, what you do is really at that intersection of user-generated content, how you repackage it, redesign it, and distribute it back to the whole community. So just to give everybody a little background, you and I had to go back and look. I think we met, I'm going to say 2014, 2015.
2014, I think is what I remember, yeah.
I was running social media at Navy Federal, and we were launching a membership campaign called Join the Family. It was the first time the credit union was using a hashtag in a 30-second NFL TV spot, and I was put on the hook to come up with a fun, creative, user-generated content campaign and came across This Moment. It was all about the user stories, how people became members at Navy Federal. We packaged up those stories, created a branded landing page, redistributing it back to the community to share how people had become members and share those great stories. So the first question, digging into that content side that's one example of a company using user-generated content from Navy Federal. But who else do you see doing this type of great storytelling? I know you've got some great clients, but what are they doing? How are they doing it?
So it's a good question, because the obvious examples that everybody runs to are the examples of, I got a hashtag dropped on my lap and management wants us to do something for a large promotion, whether it's Super Bowl or otherwise. And you have to come up with a call to action, and you want a way to showcase, and there's some feel-good element to it, et cetera. And that's, of course, campaign-based. It's a very temporal, it happens at a single moment in time. Some customers, as of late, who've been looking at this as more of an evergreen strategy, we work with the Microsoft Stores division, among other divisions. We work with Xbox and others. Xbox is almost too obvious, so I'll leave that one for later. But for the Stores division, one of the things that Microsoft Stores really takes a position on is the fact that across the world, there are the haves and the have-nots. There are people who are more disenfranchised than others, and therefore don't really have the ability to walk into a Microsoft store and purchase a bunch of expensive hardware. So they created a program called Empower Possibilities, whether it's on social, hashtag on Twitter, on Instagram, talking about hashtag Empower Possibility, or it's a direct upload through a website that we host on Microsoft's behalf, or if it's in a physical installation. In the stores, they had these capture stations where anybody could, at any time, could say, I wish for something. I want to have my possibilities empowered. And then over some interval of time, Microsoft Stores team made good on those requests, and of course turned it into a great documentary moment, going to a school that's still suffering the effects of Hurricane Katrina yet so many years later, able to deliver 10 Surface laptops and some internet hubs, or people in Europe who are just looking to subsidize some community centers with new technology, and Microsoft was able to do it in Spain and Italy. So these huge companies, and it's a program maybe a lot of your listeners hadn't even heard of, because there are so many large companies doing so many programs simultaneously. We do have that signal noise issue. So the Navy Federal example that you gave is a good one, in that you guys went hard on NFL commercials. That's a really great way to let the world know. Microsoft advertising, they have their mechanisms. Another example of a company that you may not think of using UGC for applications within and for internal needs. The Walt Disney Company's talent acquisition team utilizes their own employee base and activates them. So ESPN, for example, 6 years ago had a huge challenge, part of Disney. They want young grads from college to move to and work in Bristol, Connecticut. And I have friends around the area, no offense to anybody in Bristol, but it's like not usually one of the top 5 metros that the college kids picking when they're thinking, where am I going to go and start my new life as an adult? So what Disney and ESPN very cleverly did was craft a message about how to be here, ESPN, like be here, and showcase all of the cool stuff that people are doing in and around the actual campus, as well as around Bristol and around Connecticut generally, and drove applications for employment up 800% as a result of this program, which only ran for like 6 months. So you can see whether it's employee content, user content, when people have the ability to upload very quickly, subscribe very quickly, add to the conversation, that's critical. So targeting social as well as direct uploads, physical in store is good for any campaign.
I feel like I need to back up just a little bit because those are great examples, but just dig into the software itself. So, if I were to try to explain this moment as part social listening tool to ingest the user generated content. So somebody out there posts a picture on Instagram or a video on YouTube or a tweet. Your software has the ability to listen across the social web, find that content, ingest it. There's a whole element of gaining the user's permission. I forget how you typically refer to that.
We refer to that as closed loop consent or seals. But you nailed it. It's a platform that's mixing owned content, so brand and agency owned assets, photos, videos, apps, text, documents, whatever they own. And then they're going out and they're listening, as you said, to social. That traditionally has been Twitter, and then it was Twitter and Instagram, and then it's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and sometimes LinkedIn, and sometimes Pinterest, and on and on. But it's listening and seeing how do we pull all of that earned content in, all the user posts and employee posts, marry that with the owned content that you're already curating, and then using this kind of cool trick we call closed loop consent, we have a way to go and secure marketing rights from the end user in their app. It keeps them in the app and gives us consent. So that the combined content base becomes your hub of publishing. And the question becomes where, and I think to your point and just the overarching theme of the podcast, which is the design of the messaging. How then do you create a delivery, a design of, something with such specificity that really hits that, end user, that end employee, whoever the audience is, right in the chest? That's the magic. That's the trick.
And I think you talked about the owned content versus the earned or user generated content. And when you think about that design element, we're talking about whether that's a web page, a landing page, or one of the cool things I know I keep asking you about is the SMS delivery. So there's also this element of, and this kind of gets into the design and the delivery aspect of these types of campaigns, but the ability to mix all that media up and then serve it right back to the whole community as this repackaged element. Am I missing anything on that side of it?
No, and maybe even just to give you kind of like a punctuation mark on that, I'll refer back to an Xbox example that I was teasing. Xbox, we work with PlayStation and other game companies. They all have holiday seasons. They all have a lot of games to promote. And there's a few game shows that used to exist pre-coronavirus where everyone would show up together, like for example, in Los Angeles in June. And the challenge is, how do I get my information to a community of gamers? And how do I make it a two-way conversation? So what they did very deftly is create what we call playlists of content. So think of a playlist as a sequence of stuff that you on your phone kind of thumb through. It could be photos, videos, audio, whatever. And they created a playlist for each one of their top tier games. They had a Tomb Raider playlist, Racing for Horizons game playlist, and so forth, Halo. And then as people during the show are there naturally creating user-generated content, they're taking photos of themselves standing next to Master Chief, in the lobby. They're taking videos of themselves with whoever at the game tent, and they're uploading those. Then our customer, Xbox, can go out and pull in all these posts that are being created in real time during the event and augment the playlist that they're promoting with that new content. So if you can't travel to Los Angeles and you love Halo, now you can just text the word Halo to this number and you're receiving a playlist that's dynamically updating as the show is updating, almost as if you're there peeking over somebody's shower who had an attendee badge.
Right, creating engagement experiences in real time. So I want to come back to, you just started to talk about behavior. You kind of mentioned at the beginning. We're going to kind of pull that thread a little bit, but before I get there, it's something you and I don't talk a lot about, but you spent the early part of your career at CNET and Yahoo doing product development. So I just want to know, what were you doing there? How you morphed that into your own company? What gave you the idea? What was the seed for everything you just talked about that has become this?
This is a question that could be answered a number of different ways, but the way, as I've thought about this lately, because people have a tendency to think about these existential questions during quarantine, is back at GameSpot.com. So the video game analogy, nice little crossover. GameSpot.com is the asset that CNET Networks owned. It is now owned by CBS Interactive, which reviews video games, videos, previews, reviews of video games. And I was running product development there, creating new and interesting technologies that were really desktop web-based to engage gamers. And we were one of the first websites that allowed gamers to upload video of them playing games, upload pictures of stuff directly to our website. It was UGC before UGC was ever even called that. And we're talking about 2003, 2002. And on that went, and as time passed, we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to go kind of bigger? What if you could kind of influence an entire, not just this niche games focused with heavy PC, heavy kind of console game, single player style, an opportunity to go to Yahoo and kind of expand that and get to more casual games and kind of just gaming in general. And after another year of that, it really felt like something's missing. The idea of gaming as a segment is interesting, but really this is about how you connect people with their passions, with multimedia, with whatever technology is available. And we thought, this is an opportunity to go start our own thing. Plus a whole bunch of other stuff about how corporate life kind of beating us down. But you had the opportunity to say, hey, let's raise some money. Let's create something called This Moment, because we want to know where you're at. How are you at this moment? End users have connections. People have connections with other humans. And we thought, that's powerful. But what else is powerful is that people have connections with brands and products that they love. So what if we could create an app for your phone that talked to your desktop that allowed you to connect not only with your friends, but also with brands and interests and ideas that you liked in a social network that was not 100% human-based. And then, of course, that pivoted and evolved as we realized it was a really crowded space to be playing. And when you're talking about sharing photos with friends, literally everybody was doing an app like that. But nobody was really focusing on the brands, and the brands took notice. We got interest from Google initially, and they signed a 2-year commercial agreement saying, hey, we know this is important. We want to link our YouTube social network with Facebook, with Twitter, with everybody else, and have it be a brand narrative that's being told. And so our platform was able to facilitate this idea of taking anything from anywhere and putting it together. That's the genesis of it.
Nice. Some of that I definitely hadn't heard before. You mentioned during COVID, the existential questions take the personal turn here, but how are you doing at this moment? What's going on in quarantine?
Every week, if I'm asked this question on Monday, you get a different answer than on Friday. So it's a good thing we're recording this on Friday. We're making do. We have our health. Nobody is sick, which is really wonderful. We have 3 little boys who are all distance learning at the moment. So that means that we're doing our day jobs. My wife and I, who is a professor, and she's doing virtual teaching. We're also assistant teachers to these kids, as well as basically tech support at all times. And one of the things that's been really fun is they just introduced the instruments, physical instruments. So now there is a recorder and a violin and a cello that at all different times and sometimes at the same time have to perform on a Zoom meeting. And needless to say, I've upgraded my internet and I've had to add a whole bunch of new devices to manage it. But really, it's really been really great. And I'm living in California, Southern California, and we have recently opened up playgrounds at parks so kids can actually go down slides and go on swings, which was a huge deal literally just a week ago. And they opened up outdoor dining. So I've been able to go out and sit outside safely, have dinner with friends, and reconnect. So if you asked me that question 2 months ago, it was kind of darker days, really hot and fires burning and smoke in the air in California and not actually able to go anywhere and escape it. But today we're feeling much better.
We've been so lucky here on the East Coast, and both my wife and I, keeping our jobs, kids are healthy, been able to keep them in private school. My oldest is just turned 5 and was supposed to start kindergarten, and we are so lucky. So it's good to hear that
your oldest did start kindergarten.
We ended up keeping him in the private school, and it's probably the best decision we made. So we dual enrolled in public school, but they were starting public school virtually, and I felt like it was really important for him to maintain the friends that he was having, and they were able to keep the school open and they were able to make room for him. So for me, from a professional marketing perspective, it has changed just the overall strategy. Get back from an engagement perspective. That's what we're talking about from a content, and what marketers are tasked with doing. I think everybody is having to rethink, how do we do that? And maybe this even comes around to these small wins that you were talking about. I posted something the other day of I really have this almost odd feeling of made more connections in the past 3 months with people I've never met before, almost because Zoom is so ubiquitous. We can do this all day day long. You can reach out to somebody and everybody's home. So there's this very weird like re-socialization of the web happening. And I think you're probably seeing that increase social media content, stuff that people are creating and putting out there. And I know you and I talked a couple of weeks ago about the impact on marketing campaigns and people using the platform. But you also started to see, at least a couple of weeks ago, you were very excited about the future kind of going into the last quarter here into 2021. Everybody's starting to realize that you can operate, that there is a way to continue with your marketing or PR or communications campaigns. People are still out there buying. There's still a desire for products and services, and everyone's had to adapt. I don't know if you've got any kind of update on your forecast on where that's all going.
Well, it was really quiet through the summer. When lockdown first started rolling across the country, it was really quickly apparent which businesses that we've been working were ready for at-home employees versus those that didn't operate in that way. We work with companies who are in New York City, in downtown Manhattan, where it's a pattern of you get to the office at 7:30 or 8 a.m., you're sitting at your cubicle, your desk, or your office, you leave at whatever time, you go have a cocktail, you get on the train, you go home. It's the commuter lifestyle. And you talk to your coworkers just by walking up to them or meeting over. And when that whole team goes into, at-home work, productivity just plummets. You can feel like the amount of time being wasted. So over the last few months, I think we've seen our prospects and our clients getting better at working from home, regardless of what their divisions are. I even work with these giant, I won't out them, but company that didn't have any kind of software to coordinate their employees. That my pal who went over to this agency basically had to introduce Slack to 100 people who never even heard the word. And he's like, well, how the hell does anybody get anything done around here? Don't you use anything? Like, no, it's written down on notepads. So things have evolved really fast this year. And we had a lot of fits and starts, I'd say, like right around the end of August, right before Labor Day, usually is when that summer thaw happens. Everyone starts freaking out about, oh my God, the fall's here and I got to do all my marketing. We had that rush when I talked to you 2 weeks ago. And then, like any election year, this one is more amplified in its craziness. As soon as RGB or RBG passes, and then coronavirus super spreading event at the White House, and then, all these events start peeling off, everybody just went quiet again. So I had all this like excitement and energy with new customers, and everyone now is just literally staring at the calendar, wondering how fast can the election come and when will we know?
Yeah, holding pattern until November, but everybody I think also recognizing that date is somewhat arbitrary as well, which is even scary. I won't go there. Being in DC is just wild.
I can only imagine what this must be like in DC. Like, how do you escape it?
Local news is the national news. The national news is the local news, and it's crazy.
My fear is that we're going to hit the week. That's my hope, and also my fear. We're going to hit the election week, and literally everyone who's been on pause is going to say, okay, now I have to get something done before Thanksgiving or for Christmas or whatever it is. And it's going to be this hysterical race to try to get some marketing program out before the end of the year. But we're ready. We're standing by to help.
Yeah. Let's shift gears completely. So, it's still on top.
I mean, bounce all around, because you could cut this up and have it be for multiple episodes.
I'm already seeing everywhere I can go, which is just incredible to think I've got a framework that's that malleable.
Well, not that I'm trying to insinuate myself into every one of your podcasts, but if you ever wanted to have like the go-to person that you call to sort of bounce ideas off of and, make character out of me, I would be happy to do that too.
The segment's going to be called The Cold Call. So we're going to have a whole segment called The Cold Call, where I'm going to just literally ambush somebody to get their opinion on whatever it is. And I think part of that is the audience that I'm talking to, PR, marketing, communications people, they probably are used to getting cold calls, but I don't know that they hear a cold call. And not that it'll be that. It's not going to be in that kind of a sales methodology. But yeah, it's an idea I was kind of toying around with. If you listened to the 5-minute episode 1, I talked about, I just wanted to ambush people.
Yeah, I listened. It was great. I guess what I'm suggesting is if you wanted to have a recurring character that you call to just get a feedback on, please make me that person. I give you like the 1-minute soundbite on whatever I think, and I could be as vulgar or as okay as you want. If you want to add bleeping or make anything mature, I don't know what you're trying to go for, so I'm trying to keep it clean.
I'm not quite there yet either. I'm definitely figuring this thing out as I go, but no, thank you. I might very well take you up on that for sure. Stuff I wanted to get to is the luxury in the cloud, and I don't know exactly how to get there, but over the last year or so, you and I have been talking about virtual reality, the concept of cloud computing, sort of of human behavior as it relates to social media and what people are doing on their phone and on the computer. And I think fundamentally this blurring of the physical and virtual worlds. And it was the article from Fast Company back in September when we was last about Gucci, who was no longer just designing physical products, but they were also designing this like virtual $10,000 dress that you could put into your virtual world or your virtual closet, but it would be branded as Gucci. And it's this literally this blurring of the physical and virtual worlds, and specifically the Gucci item about the luxury element of that. And this is where you and I really carried that thread down through human behavior. Why do people buy $10,000 watches? Why do people need the material, the Ferrari or whatever the thing is? And what does that look like in a virtual world when, especially right now, everybody is at home. They're not going anywhere. You don't need to wear a Gucci suit to work because you're not going to work. So I guess I want to get there with you and almost, what is this going to mean for how we work? What does content and design and delivery and marketing campaigns look like if we're talking about a virtual world that's blurring the physical and then the virtual reality?
There's a lot there, a lot of questions.
Get a piece of the part. I don't actually know where the question is.
It's all in there. But so maybe starting with one of the last things I heard first and then running backward is there's this interesting inverted effect, which is what you kind of just put the point on, you've nailed on, which is like that behavior, maybe taking it to the higher level, behavior or versus thing. Talk a little bit about the Internet of Things versus the Internet of Behaviors. And there's this amazing inverted thing, this juxtaposition of how fancy and internet connected can I make this physical device, whatever the IoT device is that you're talking about, and how much money and how much energy and resource gets put into, you pick it, your appliance, the device you rely on, your home security system, whatever the IoT device is. How far do you go there creating this physical thing, which really only has a temporal, in the moment touch to a connected world, versus saying, forget all that physical crap. We don't actually need to sell anybody a good. We just need to sell them the idea of luxury. And the idea of luxury lives in the cloud. And if you can sell them on the idea of luxury, then the thing, the IoT device, ceases to matter. It doesn't even matter anymore. So when you talk about I don't have anywhere to go wearing my Gucci outfit, comment there is, I've actually seen this now with a number of people who are young people, I guess, who are in my world, some relatives and some friends, that they actually are thinking about creating these, the way that you've had the genesis for you to create a podcast. They're talking about creating YouTube channels and hey, I want to appear on camera and I'm going to talk about how skilled I am at doing crafts, 5-minute crafting, says my niece. And I'm like, oh, okay, well now actually you dressed up in a certain way on camera is like going to work. There is now a need to present yourself a certain way. And I see a future that's like some of those crazy movie futures that used to always look so ridiculous in the 80s, but wearing some kind of a trench coat outfit that you can tap into the cloud and have it call a style that sort of coats the fiber optic little enabled lenses across the fabric. Well, now you actually have luxury in the cloud and a physical manifestation of it, which is almost incidental. So I think, I don't know if I just added more questions, but what I've been thinking
We're going to be blowing people's minds here. I think you may have just blown mine. We were watching The Voice the other day, or not The Voice. What is the one where they're all dressed up as crazy characters and you don't know who it is, the Masked Singer. And as we're watching it, I'm like, nobody in the audience is wearing masks. I'm like, why is nobody wearing masks? When was this episode recorded? And I go on my phone, I type in Masked Singer season 4 recording during quarantine or whatever. And literally it comes up that they have got a virtual audience and they've used camera tricks to make it look like they're panning behind the backs of heads. So when you're watching it on TV, you think somebody's in the audience, but they're not actually there. And you're seeing the same thing happening with the NBA and all the sports where they're putting up these virtual audiences and even pumping in the audio. And it's like, well, what's real and what's not? And you can pull that thread all the way down to the actual things that you're talking about, whether that's your niece doing a crafting message and what she's crafting YouTube channel and what she's wearing on the channel, or if she's got this massive live audience applauding her for her work, right? She's doing her version of the Ellen show, but you don't know as the viewer whether it's real or not. And do you need to? Does it matter?
So there's an interesting commentary on that, which is there are entertainers. I'll use the term entertainer just broadly. Basically anybody whose job it is to go up and assume a persona for the purpose of entertaining people. It could be sports, could be music, arts, culture, whatever. The entertainers of the last 15 years are super well poised, completely eclipse anyone else when it comes to things like lockdown, quarantine, and coronavirus. So I think about like my niece or any of the other young people or the YouTube celebrities who now have full-on jobs, on the Discovery Channel because they're such great hosts. They have gone through life with the only feedback on their performance being likes. Right. There is no moment where they're in front of a studio audience or they're in front of a giant fan group of a stadium. So now we talk about these athletes who require the sounds in the stadium just to get themselves pumped up. And you see these people, the Tonight Show folks who are trying to tell jokes to a camera in the bedroom or with like one or two other guests, and how they're frazzled and adjusting and not doing a good job of it. In fact, it's all the conventional entertainers that seem like they're the ones in the press for either doing or saying bad things, like in their own probably frustrated space that they're occupying. But all these people who are totally okay with an app view, just little hearts sort of blinking up from the bottom right corner, and as the fury of likes goes higher, the hearts get bigger. If that's all you got to do to get that little dopamine hit, wow, you're ready to go. I don't know what the point of that was, but I feel like the youth right now is kind of poised to eclipse those who are the traditional folks who provide us, culture and entertainment and sports. We're seeing it, I think, in real time.
And maybe I'm forcing it a little bit here, but I'll bring it back to the whole premise of this, of the content, whatever that story is, whatever that sport event is, whatever that video is, how it's packaged and how it's delivered can be virtual or real or manipulated or presented however you want the audience to interpret it. And that's a really mind-blowing thing, but it's the world that we're living in right now where you can create your own reality.
A little bit about these things and these behaviors. I've been stunned at how effective content development companies have been as of late, leveraging the data that they have on their audience to tailor more content to their audience. Whether it's the Netflixes or the Amazons, or you'll see a show pop up as a recommended show for you. It gives you some percentage number as to why. This is 87% what you might like, sort of an arbitrary number. But then when you click on it and start watching it, you realize this show has been written almost by bots, in the sense that they've gone ahead and mined your history and then just compiled a story that more or less touches on themes that you seem to like.
What was the Sandra Bullock Netflix, like kind of the first one that was like
Bird Box?
Yeah, that whole premise is that they knew that it would go viral, and it did. It worked.
That's the exact premise. And there's another show called Ozark, which I always Ozark. So there's you heard of Breaking Bad?
Yes, of course.
So spoilers to anybody who's actually seen Breaking Bad, but there's an amazing couple episodes where one idiot has to dispose of a body in a bathtub and has to get a very specific solution of acid to do it, because the acid will erode anything except for the porcelain in the bathtub. Of course, the specific chemical was not got, and then it ends up this huge disaster where the bathtub melts. So that concept didn't exist on television. The concept exists in the news and maybe for people in the FBI. But they, over the course of many episodes, meticulously explain this concept. And then, of course, the person in the solution is put into a oil drum and loaded on the back of a truck and taken away. Ozark goes out with Jason Bateman, and they spend all this money, and they get the Netflix information data set that says, here are all these areas of themes where shows have ended, and there's a void, and you can fill that void. And here's the things you need to include. And in the first episode of Ozark, and they nailed me straight away. I love the movie The Departed. They straight up do a Departed final scene where Agent Quinn, whoever is played by Martin Sheen, is thrown off a building in The Departed and was falling to his death. They throw that in the first episode of Ozark. They have Mexican drug cartels who are threatening people, and then for like 5 seconds in the background of one shot, you see someone being pushed into a barrel and loaded onto a truck. They just monopolized on Breaking Bad 5 episodes explaining that to me, and they did it in 5 seconds. And I looked around realizing, wait a second, this episode has every single thing that I've liked about like the last 5 things I've seen. And of course, episode 2 comes, episode 3 comes, and it's terrible. And I stopped watching. So I just feel there's something about this taste-making content generation where I think content creators are going to start to be replaced with AI. That internet of behavior, there is something programmatic to it where you can kind of get mediocre enough, if not kind of good, and it will sell.
Or predictive about what it is, right? That you need to create in order to resonate. And that's so tailored. You can customize it for you. You could customize it for me. You could customize it for a million different endpoints and still accomplish the same goal, which is a crazy concept. I had a final question, but it just feels like nowhere near in the realm of everything we just talked about. I have an entrepreneurial spirit, and and it's the question of if you could go back when you were starting your company and wish somebody had told you something, what is it the thing you wish you had known when you were starting your company?
I'll give you 3 things that I wish I would have known, because there are so many pitfalls that you can avoid. But one is, we have to always assume that we're in the transition point between 2 technologies. There are obvious points in time when, say, the CD came out, and that was the first time there was digital media, and I was like, oh my gosh, an insane moment of crossing over. Say the same thing for mobile or desktop to mobile, let's say, in tech. But really, we're always in the middle of a transition in some way, shape, or form. And the mistake we made was trying to satisfy tech that's before the moment that we're in, the current moment that we're in, and the future that we're in. We tried to make something that would satisfy end users who were sort of in whatever phase of the continuum of the tech world that we were in. And so as a result, we created a service that had an iPhone app, but talked to a Facebook app and ran as a desktop website. So we were maintaining effectively all these endpoints for a service, which really we could have just focused and optimized on the forward-leaning one. In retrospect, to do anything except for a double down on mobile, our app was insane. So as a learning, it's focusing where you're leaning forward, and just don't worry about people you leave behind. It's business, unfortunately. Second one, I'll say, is that when you're starting up a company, it's really easy to be reactive to things that are around you. And that's what some people call it being scrappy. Some people call it pivot. But the truth is, if you can close out the world and not try to react on all fronts at all times, you better position yourself to tell your story and to do what you want to do, versus saying that you can do all these other things. And especially in the world of content marketing, which I think that you'll appreciate, when customer is an agency of record and maybe Federal Credit Union, and they ask you to do something, the tendency is to say yes. And if all your customers are asking you to do stuff, you keep saying yes, then you're never actually doing what you're trying to do. So I guess that's a really long way of saying knowing when to say no, but just very specifically comes down to customers and what they want, because you can really deep six yourself over serving one customer. And the last one I'd say is just about people. And this is where it all comes down. The only reason I started a company, the only reason I've enjoyed working in tech, is because I was working with the people, the humans that I got to meet. When those people I worked with in my companies, the people I met through business relationships, like, et cetera. There's a moment in time when you're starting a company when you have friends and family who are around. And there's a point where friends and family probably don't and shouldn't be around, don't need to be and shouldn't be around, and then maybe professional. That's not to say it as a slight to friends and family. I'll give you like a religious example. There is a time for zealots and a time for acolytes. And zealots believe in the people who start the company. And then acolytes are the people who believe in the mission of the company. And if you don't find that moment where you need to move to the next level, and it's really hard, and as soon as you realize that you're there, you're already a year too late, because you really need to be much more methodical. And that's why some people say, mixing business and family is challenging. And it is. If you don't have a clear head about what your end goal is, it can become very messy very quickly. Those are my 3.
Well done. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Really appreciate this.
Welcome. Love to, when you want to talk about getting into some IoT, IOB stuff / what's going to happen at tech conferences that are coming in coronavirus. That's an interesting subject. I just saw a pitch from a company who was marketing their solution to a company that I was also pitching, sort of like I used to say they were pitching against. And I happen to know the person who was the point of contact. So I was shown what was being pitched against us. And I'm not kidding. This organization pitched making a virtual reality, called like an AR, Google Cardboard, put your phone in front of your face, walk through of a convention experience. The kind of thing that I think we would all joke about, but like you would go into the virtual hall at the Bellagio,
creating
look left, see fake people showing you Rockford Fosgate amps at the auto sound booth, and then whatever. And I couldn't believe that in 2020, an actual company is saying that the idea of a virtual conference is a good idea. I was stunned. I really sat me back in my chair.
Yeah, it feels like a default. Like I said, they're just defaulting to what they know a conference looked like, not the forward-leaning piece of what it is.
That's the backward leaning. There you go. Fun, man. Fun. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm honored to be the first guest for the cold call. Good questions. And you got me thinking. I think I'll do some follow-ups after this.
All right.